At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
If you go and get your child and your child is having a freak out, you pick them up, then it is your job to do a little post-game analysis. Not when they're in the middle of the freak out. And believe me, the freak out will probably stop pretty quickly once you get them in the car. That's the way this thing works. But it is then your job to say, so it sounds like your worry really got control of you. It sounds like your worry really freaked you out. Let's talk about what we're going to do next time when worry shows up.
Welcome to Season 7 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we'll talk about managing anxiety and all the other emotions too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious. I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author. I've been a therapist for 35 years. Parenting can be a flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll tell you what to do and what to say.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, Robin.
We have a lot of news today.
I know we have a lot of news, a lot of announcements.
Yes. So I'll go first.
Okay. You have more announcements than me.
I guess I do. Yeah. So I'm going to take a couple months on sabbatical, and I have asked your brother, who is my husband, who is the show's editor,
behind the scenes,
to replace me, because I'm going to go on a sabbatical because I have a business that we're in the process of launching a new service, and I need to get through this, and then we'll see what it's done so I can come back.
Yeah. So that's totally exciting for you. And you ran this idea by me, or you said, I want to do this. And of course, I'm totally on board. For one, because your business is amazing in the way you run your business. It's Lux Recess is your business. And if you guys haven't ever been to Robin's website, luxrecess.com, it's unbelievable what she does. You should just check it out because it's just amazing what she does. And also because my brother, your husband, is one of the funniest people I know. He's got a very dry sense of humor. And I think having him as my co-host for however long it happens is really going to be a treat for me too. So
absolutely.
I'm all in. There's no downside to this other than I'll miss you, of course, but I talk to you all the time. So I won't miss you. Our listeners might miss you, but Ed is awesome.
He is awesome.
Can you tell us at all what this new service is, or is that still in the works?
Some of it is still in the works, but I founded Lux Recess in 2014. My background in my career and before kids and everything has always been, I was a magazine publisher, and Lux Recess is a luxury family travel magazine. It's online. I'm also an advisor. I became a travel advisor in 2020, which was a really fun year for travel.
Yeah, that's a good year to become a travel advisor.
Yeah, it was a great year to start doing that too. But it's been really wonderful. I have a really engaged community of readers and clients, and I'm launching a membership service. I'm sort of downloading my brain of my years of information, whether it's Disney cruises and Disney World trips or going to Japan or going on safari. It's a wonderful resource where my team and I are creating all these guides and information for families to plan their own vacations. And the comedy actually of this from being on Flusterclux is that in reality, there are a lot of people who plan travel who really like being in control.
Yeah, right.
And so there's definitely some of the best people I come across who are amazing at this. They like being in control. So there's this interesting model that will also help those people. And then there are other people who are like, I don't know what to do and I don't know where to go. And, so it helps them as well. So all the insights I've gained from Flusterclux over the years of the crossroads of anxiety and decision making is so much a part of what I do.
And problem solving. Oh my gosh. Your job is stepping into situations where things are not going as planned and helping people figure that out.
I just had a meeting with a client this past week. It was like a deep therapy session. It was interesting because one of the things that I think people who are going to call you for a specific service I still feel like I'm often talking to moms who work full time, who have kids, who are just getting so much done. They're wanting to outsource, some of this. And I'm in the business of delight. So what is it that I'm hearing that the mom needs the most to just be delighted and to be enthusiastic and look forward to something and break out of a vacation rut and everything? So I'm a very active listener of what I think that is. And, so much of it is all about family connection, which we talk about all the time. And how do we use travel to deepen the connections with our families? And it's a mindset.
Yeah. And Robin is so good at this. And I think that the combining, which I think has sort of happened a little organically, right? Combining this idea of I can create travel, like she knows all the stuff. She knows all the stuff. I was in the Reno airport having gotten snowed in out in the Sierra Mountains on my knees, literally on my knees with my laptop on the floor. And she's like, okay, go here, book this, get to that gate. I mean, it was, but just this idea of how do we create a trip that allows for connection? How do we create a trip that makes sure that it actually serves the purpose that a family vacation is supposed to serve?
Well, it's really funny. We've joked about this because everywhere you go, people know about your podcast. Nowhere I go do people know about the podcast or anything. But once in a while, I'll talk. There was a family, they were going to Costa Rica. I said, and what type of activities are you interested in? And so then as if she had a Lynn Lyons script, she was like, I think the ziplining might make my 7-year-old a little uncomfortable, but I think it's really important to practice being uncomfortable. And I was like, wait. I was like, are you familiar with Lynn Lyons? And she was like, yeah, I love her podcast. And I was like, yeah, that's me talking to her.
I'm Robin.
And she didn't know, which I thought was so funny.
Gosh. But I think that's a wonderful combination of the skills that you're really focusing on. How can I make this a great experience for families? And that's what I'm focused on too, right? How do we help families connect? And so this is very exciting for you. It's totally in keeping with you just getting shit done, which you do all the time. So it's awesome. And I'll be talking to Ed.
Yes. So it might take him a few episodes, I imagine, to sort of get comfortable, but buckle your seatbelts because he is so funny. I look forward for the two of you to have and be able to replicate your natural dialogue because there are laughter tears in abundance.
Yeah. And then one more thing, also, one more just little announcement. We haven't recorded a Flusterclux in session episode for a while. A few episodes ago, we recast one. And what a Flusterclux in session episode is me doing a session with a parent or sometimes with the whole family. We record it as is. It's not pre-done. It's a live recording, but obviously it's not played live. But if anybody is interested in volunteering to do one of these, the benefits are that you do get my full therapeutic attention for at least an hour, free. Yep, it's free. And we obviously withhold or change information or names to protect your anonymity. But really, honestly, you doing this is a big service to other people listening. And nobody's ever done one of these and been like, oh my God, I can't believe we aired our dirty laundry or shared all that. Because it really is pretty much stuff that everybody can relate to.
We'll have a link again. We'll repost the link in our Facebook group. So if you're not a member yet of the Facebook group, I highly suggest you go and join it and look for that sign up link.
Yeah. And I work around your schedule and we make it really easy. And it's actually kind of fun. I mean, I love doing those sessions. I love doing those episodes. So happy to have you join me.
When we come back after this break, we're going to talk about the whole range of when do you pick up your kid from school and when do you not? Or you get the call from the school nurse's office. And let's break this down.
Yeah, because one of my sayings is beware the pickup plan. So we'll break that down when we come back. My son got a Quip 360. He just went to the dentist a few weeks ago, and they gave him the best report that he's had in a long time. The new Quip 360 oscillating toothbrush literally revolves around you. The American Dental Association said Quip 360 is scientifically proven to remove up to 11 times more plaque between teeth compared to a manual toothbrush and up to 2 times more whitening on day 1. If you don't absolutely love your Quip 360, return it for free within 30 days. Brush easy knowing you get a free lifetime warranty for purchasing on getquip.com and the opportunity to subscribe to Refill Heads by mail every 3 months. When you subscribe to AutoShip, you'll be enrolled in Quip Perks to earn credit back over time. Free your mouth with Quip. Discover the 25,000 5-star reviews and mouths that are already loving Quip. Just for listeners of Flusterclux, get 20% off site-wide and a free travel case and countertop stand at getquip.com/fluster. Free your mouth today and save 20% site-wide, plus a free travel case and a countertop stand at getquip.com/fluster. getquip.com/fluster. I do enjoy a little luxury, but I don't really always want to pay top dollar. So I've discovered Quince, as have many of my friends and family members. Quince is my go-to for luxury essentials at affordable prices, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50, washable silk tops, organic cotton sweaters, even gold jewelry. The best part, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. You heard me right, 50 to 80% less. They do this by partnering directly with top factories. Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I love that. You can tell just by feeling it, wearing it. Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/fluster for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/fluster to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/fluster. So it's hard to eat healthy, isn't it? I mean, I need to have my house full of healthy snacks, healthy alternatives, and healthy meals. So that's why I love Thrive Market. It's like having a personal guide to healthier living for our families when they come to visit. Thrive Market makes it simple to find trusted, family-friendly brands without spending hours in the grocery store. From snacks and school lunches to packing healthy things when you travel, everything they offer is 100% non-GMO. And with their on-site filters, you can shop based on what matters most to your family. Are you interested in low sugar, gluten-free, organic? Are you trying to get that protein that they keep telling us we need to get? They're all just a click away. We can use those filters. We can put them into the Thrive Market app, and the Healthy Swap scanner, it scans a product you're used to buying, and it instantly recommends a cleaner, healthier alternatives. I use this trying to find better crackers, trying to find better popcorn, even trying to find better cereals for kids to have in the morning before they go to school. For my family, this has been a game changer, and we have made some great swaps. If you are ready for a junk-free start to 2025, head to thrivemarket.com/fluster and get 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's thrivemarket.com/fluster. thrivemarket.com/fluster. Okay, we're back. All right, so Robin, the pickup plan. Parents and schools ask me all the time, when do I pick my child up? So a parent will say, she texts me and she says she's having a panic attack, or she's crying in the bathroom, or she's in the nurse's office and she says that she's going to be sick. And I really don't know if I should pick her up or not pick her up. So that's what the parents say. What I hear very often from schools is, we are really trying to get this child to stay in school and to engage in things, and we don't want the parents to come and pick them up. but the parents are doing that. Sometimes they're picking them up despite the fact that everybody has agreed that's not a good plan. And with the use of texting and phones, back in the old days, you had to go to the nurse and the nurse had to call your mom. And now they're older kids are sort of doing it independently. And then what's the role of the school nurse in this? I love training school nurses. You've heard me say that a million times. And so if you have a child who is wanting to be picked up from school, how do you know if you should pick them up or you shouldn't pick them up? How do you come up with a plan with the school that feels like it's actually productively working on your child's anxiety? And then I think a really interesting question too is, how does this start when kids are young and you don't even recognize that it's anxiety? And then suddenly 3 years in or even a year in, you're like, oh, geez, what's going on here? So those are all the complicated things about this.
As you point out, this is somewhat age driven because it depends on whether or not they have their own ability to advocate for you to pick them up without involving the school. So that's like a different section. But if we just start with that elementary school student and they've asked to come home from the nurse and there's no history of wanting to stay home and skip school or other things, how do you handle that so that you don't start non-effective patterns or like unhelpful patterns and habits?
Yeah. And pattern is the key word because, of course, there'll be times when your child is sick and they'll call you from the nurse's office and they'll say, come pick him up. Or there will be times when, for whatever reason, maybe they didn't sleep well or there's something going on. It's not like you should never pick your child up from school. That's too black and white. But what you want to pay attention to is, first of all, is your child a frequent flyer in the nurse's office? And nurses know this. They know who they are. And one of the tricky things for school nurses is that they are trained to do an assessment. They are trained to determine whether or not your child is sick. When a child is having those somatic symptoms, when they're having a tummy ache or a headache, or they say that they don't feel well, they really do have a tummy ache a lot of the times. They're not making it up. And so a nurse is trying to figure out, how do I treat the symptoms? But if you have a child who's asking to be picked up from school frequently, and by frequently, I mean even twice a month is frequently, you want to have a conversation with the school. You want to have a conversation with the nurse about how often your child is showing up in the nurse's office, because it is very likely if the nurse is calling you on a regular basis, there are more visits happening, maybe that you don't even know about. There are some schools that have a policy that if your child shows up in the nurse's office, that they let the parent know, which, okay, sometimes that's helpful. But you really want to have a conversation, because there's going to be a pattern of when they show up, what they say when they show up, what the nurse does in order to get them back into the classroom. And the end point of all that, the place where the nurse is like, oh, I really need to call the parent, is usually because it's getting a little bit more intractable. Maybe it starts off that they go to the nurse and they have a tummy ache and the nurse gives them the magic saltines or the drink of water, has them lay down, and then they go back to class. When the school nurse or the school counselor starts to begin to recognize that they're not going to be able to get the kid back to class because they're saying, I'm sick, I'm going to throw up, when the child gets more anxious and more panicky about their symptoms, it's likely you're going to get a call. So that's what you want to pay attention to.
I remember with both of my kids, that first call from the nurse, and in fairness, I don't have kids that asked to be picked up from school as a habit, but I still think that there's a point where habits start. And I think that the language that like you said, a nurse is really good at directing, like, this could be somatic stuff, or like, this is potentially viral, please come get your kid. And I know that when we hear that our kids might not be feeling well, we have to remember that these nurses are looking at students all day long and they really know what they're doing, ideally, right? I think most do. And if they say, come pick up your kid, I think that they're sick, then that's different than she says she doesn't feel well and she'd like to be collected. And I do remember I said, why don't they rest a while and then let me know in a little bit? And I said that, I can't remember which kid it was, but sure enough, it was probably a comfort touch point. The kid went off, had a fine afternoon. I picked up at school. There was no reference of illness. So if you're a little suspicious that that could be, I'm glad I didn't cave at that point, because I'm telling my kid, if they want to remove themselves from the emotional stress of something going on at school, this is how I can get home and avoid.
Right. And that can become a habit very quickly. When children are little, so one of the things we know is that the younger you are, the more likely it is that you're going to express your emotional distress through physical symptoms. The younger you are, the more likely you are to be somatic, and also everybody, the more anxious your parents are, the more likely you are to be somatic. So we pay attention to that too. That's just what the research shows. When a child is feeling distress, when they're feeling uncomfortable, when they're feeling anxious, it is very likely they won't go to the nurse and say, I'm feeling really anxious. They won't say to their teacher, I'm really worried about eating in the cafeteria. They will say, I have a tummy ache. And the teacher will say, okay, well, that's out of my specialty. Go down to the school nurse. The school nurse then will treat the tummy ache as if it's a tummy ache. And so sometimes it takes a few visits for the nurse to catch on. But what is really, really helpful as a parent is that if you know your child is struggling with some worry, if they're having difficulty falling asleep at night, if you're noticing that there's anxiety, that they're avoiding things, if you're seeing that at home, it is really, really helpful to give the nurse a heads up, because then her or his response, I would say most school nurses are women, and that's just a fact. I've met a few male school nurses. They're mostly women. So when we talk to the school nurse and you say, this anxiety thing is happening at home, and so when the child comes to visit the school nurse, we don't want to treat it like sickness. If we can address it as a symptom of their worry and their anxiety, and we work to keep them in school, that would be really helpful. So sometimes the nurses figure that out. And then the opposite happens too, is that the nurse is totally aware that this is an anxiety thing, and the parents are the ones that won't acknowledge that or aren't doing anything about it. But if you are a parent and you know that you've got a little worried chicken on your hands, let the school nurse know. And then the conversation is different. I always say, when I'm doing my trainings, I always say, particularly if I'm training school nurses, but when I'm working with schools, I say the school nurse is an incredible resource when we're dealing with anxiety, because that's a place that a child can go. And if the school nurse knows the language, if the school nurse knows what we're dealing with, then the school nurse can say, oh, you showed up here with a tummy ache. I wonder if your worry is really getting the best of you today. And I train school nurses to then be up with the language that we're using. So we've named the worry Sally. So the child shows up to the school nurse. Maybe it's a frequent flyer, comes into the school nurse and says, I have a tummy ache or I'm sick. And I want the school nurse to say, oh, you know what? This sounds like Sally might be getting the best of you. Shall we have a conversation with Sally? What do you think Sally's doing? And remember, and the school nurse can say, remember we talked about how worry causes tummy aches, because when your worry is in charge, your digestive system stops working. So it's really common for kids to feel tummy aches. And so then the nurse is having an interaction with the student that's not based on I'm sick, but it's having an interaction with the student based on, oh, your worry is really getting the best of you. So they can do a little role play. They can have a little conversation. They can get some support. We always want to do this with empathy and support and validation. And then the goal is to get the student back to the classroom. That is a very, very helpful and effective way to use visits to the nurse. The ineffective way to use visits to the nurse is if the nurse isn't up on this, doesn't know what's going on, treats the child as if they're sick, calls the parent comes and picks them up. So you got to be communicating with the school counselor and the school nurse so that the plan is consistent.
My curiosity has gotten the best of me.
Okay, good.
You have trained a lot of school nurses. You love school nurses. They're like the first line of defense and really making the school routine a good one for anxious kids in that way. What would a school nurse do who has not done your training? Is there anything that a school nurse could do that would be enabling or making it worse?
Yes. There was this, I feel, if she's listening now, young school nurse, that I called and said, okay, look, you got to stop this. This is how it can often go. And all of my empathy and all of my thanks to school nurses. But you're right. There's somebody who, for one, they're maybe not aware of this because they're new to the job, or they just have never been trained in it, or they're totally overwhelmed with what they're dealing with. So I get that.
Right. And it's perfectly appropriate that if they've never been given this information, how are they supposed to know it? Yeah. So this is no judgment, right?
Yeah, no judgment. And also, when kids are freaking out because they're anxious and they show up in the school nurse's office, that can be quite a little tornado to handle. So I totally get it. So what a school nurse might do that is problematic, or that I am going to want to interrupt, is the child, they know it's a frequent flyer. The child comes down, has a tummy ache, is talking about feeling sick, is talking like they want to go home. And the nurse will offer the reassurance that the worry is looking for. And this is really common with kids that actually are afraid of throwing up. So kids that are really worried about illness and sickness. So the child will come down and say, I think that I'm sick. Now, the child may or may not have symptoms at that point. Maybe the child has heard that the reason that Anthony isn't in school today is because Anthony has a stomach bug. That freaks them out. So they come down, and what they want the nurse to do is to take their temperature, to ask about symptoms, let them lie down for a little bit, and then the nurse gives them the reassurance that they're not sick. And then the child will go back to class. If we talk to parents about this, the same pattern is happening at home. As soon as the child feels any physical symptoms, or even their tummy gurgles, or they hear that somebody else is sick, they want reassurance. And so going to the nurse and having the nurse give you a clean bill of health is doing the disorder, because that's the certainty that the anxiety is looking for.
Anxiety seeks comfort and certainty.
Yep. And so that reassurance, if I talk to a school nurse and I say, how often is this kid showing up? And they're like, oh God, she comes in like at least once a day, or I see her 3 times a week. And I say, what do you do when she comes in? And she goes, well, I do what I always do. You know, I take her temperature, I feel her head, I give her a little glass of water. Maybe we have some saltines. I ask her if she's eaten today. I ask her blah, blah, blah. So they do their very appropriate medical assessment to figure out whether or not the child is sick. But if we know it's a frequent flyer, we don't want to do that, because we want to treat the problem that's the problem. So that's when it becomes really effective, when a child comes in, to say, oh, it sounds like Sally's bossing you around. One of the things that I love written into a school plan is that if a child comes into the office, the school nurse's office, I want them to walk in and say, Mrs. Jenkins, my worry is bugging me and it's making my tummy hurt. I'm so anxious and it's making me feel sick. And then we're identifying the problem at hand. That's a much better course of action than a child coming in and saying, I'm sick, I need to be taken home. That's the training that I do with school nurses, so that they're conversant in talking about worry and anxiety rather than talking about sickness. And believe me, the nurses know who these kids are. They know who these kids are.
So if you're training school nurses and you have that conversation, so a frequent flyer, as you call them, they come in the office, they're seeking reassurance, but the nurse knows that this is a frequent flyer who's likely got the worry. So then they talk about, it sounds like maybe since you don't have a fever, your worry might be getting the best of you. Okay, but then what happens?
Well, I'm going to back up a little bit. I don't even want them to take the temperature first.
Okay.
Because that's the reassurance. So if you've got a kid who's got emetophobia, that's a fear of throwing up, they want their temperature taken, so that the school nurse then is what we call co-compulsing. So they're doing it with the student. So I may not even go there. But so say they come in and they say, I have a tummy ache. And the nurse says, oh, you know what? This is the 4th time you've been in here this week. And so let's talk about your worry. And then remember, we don't want to get into the content. So what a nurse might say then is there anything you think that got your worry going? Because we know that worry hates uncertainty. We know that worry hates when there's a change in plan. Worry wants to know exactly what's going to happen. What do you think got your worry going? Now, that's not an important piece of information. It's an instructive piece of information, because you're illuminating the pattern to the child. Where we can go wrong is you say, oh, what do you think got your worry going? And the kid says, well, I hate gym. And so then, okay, we're going to figure out how to help you avoid gym. Not a good plan. But you can say, what do you think got your worry going? Because we know that worry does this to you. And they say, well, I have to go to gym and gym makes me really nervous and we were going to play this game and blah, 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 blah. You say, all right, So let's have a conversation with worry. So we pull it out, and that's where we talk to worry. We say, Sally, we know you show up. We know you do this. And then the nurse can say, so I'm glad you came down and talked to me about your worry. And my job is to help you learn that we're not putting your worry in charge. So let's go back. Let's go see. And that we keep them moving. We're talking about little kids here. We'll get into what to do with bigger kids. If a child is freaking out, so if you have a child who's in the school counseling office or in the regular office, sometimes it's the school secretary that's calling and saying, your child is here freaking out. If your child is freaking out, sometimes it's a judgment call of the school. And they will say, this has been going on for 20 minutes. We can't deal with this anymore. You need to come pick them up. That's not a horrible thing to happen. It only becomes a horrible thing if it happens over and over and over again. Say you've got a child who's presenting that they want to go home, not because of physical symptoms, but because they are, and I'm making air quotes, freaking out or having a panic attack, which people use that language too loosely. But they're crying, they're incapable of speaking, maybe they're angry, maybe they're getting very confrontational because they're in the fight mode of fight or flight. Sometimes the school will say, okay, we can't do this, come get them. If you go and get your child and your child is having a freak out, you pick them up, then it is your job to do a little post-game analysis, not when they're in the middle of the freak out. And believe me, the freak out will probably stop pretty quickly once you get them in the car. That's the way this thing works. But it is then your job to say, so it sounds like your worry really got control of you. It sounds like your worry really freaked you out. Let's talk about what we're going to do next time when worry shows up. And if you have a child who's even maybe in 4th or 5th grade, you can say, how do you think your worry got going? And was there anything that you did or anything that happened that really got it out of control? And let's talk about what we can do next time to manage worry when it shows up. So if you pick your child up from school, it is not then your job to say, oh my gosh, I'm so upset that you were worried. Thank God I came and got you. And now we have to bring you home to a safe place because you were feeling unsafe in school. All of that absolutely cements the behavior of avoidance.
If you're talking about panic attacks, it's likely that we're talking about middle schoolers and above. Maybe there's a test or a presentation or something that they're really trying to avoid. I'm just imagining like you go to the school because the nurse says, come get them. I don't really want to deal with this freak out. So you're in the school circle drive or whatever. Is there a scenario where you talk to the kid and then ultimately send them back into school? Or do you definitely bring them home?
No, you could definitely, if you can do that, that would be great. They come out into the car and you say, okay, so this is what we're dealing with. Fred, your worry showed up or you're having big symptoms because of this. Let's just spend 10 minutes getting your feet back under you. Let's just reboot here. Let's think about what worry is up to with the goal of you going back to class. I, of course, want that to happen with a school counselor or a school nurse or somebody. But if it can't happen and you're the one who comes and does that, that's hard for parents. I would say the likelihood, once you come to get your kid and once they're in the car, the likelihood of you getting them back into school is pretty low. That would be great. But honestly, I don't hear that happening very often. Usually once the parent shows up, game over.
Okay, but let me push you on that. This happened hypothetically. This happened to one of your boys. Okay, you're sitting in the circle drive because one of your boys is like, yeah, I just don't feel well and something's not right. You have those skills. You know what to say. What would you say? Would you? Because I think your goal would be to try and get them back in the school. So what would that look like?
So what that would look like is me saying, okay, so I came here not to help you avoid, but to help you learn. So we've got an opportunity here. And I don't want to make this a habit, but I know that you were really upset and the school said I needed to come and get you. So let's talk right now about how we're going to get you back into school. What are the steps we want to take? Number one, we want to pull that worry out. We want to listen to what it says. Anxiety is predictable. Worry is predictable. Tell me what your worry was up to. Was it doing the same old thing? The answer is yes, it was doing the same old thing. All right. So I can tell now that you're a little worked up. Let's just take a little walk outside. Let's move our bodies a little bit. Let's reset your system. Let's do a little reboot, a little reset. Maybe we do some breathing. That is all good stuff to do to reset and reboot with the goal of you walking back into school. And you can say to a child, particularly if they're in elementary school, later elementary school, if they're in middle school, certainly if they're in high school, you can say to them, the goal here is not to help your worry get stronger. The goal here is to help you manage it when it shows up. So right now, I'm your assistant manager. You're the manager of your worry. I'm your assistant manager. Let's work on this together and let's get you back into school. Now, if this has been going on and if you feel like the worry, the cult leader is really running your family, part of what you're going to have to do, and this is hard because logistically, like a parent might have to leave work and pick up their kid and they have to get back to work, but you're going to have to wait it out a little bit. It's the very same approach when a kid is refusing to get out of the car when we get to school. A parent has to be willing to wait it out. And not in a mean way, not in a get out of this car way, but I'm going to help you manage your worry. Getting them back into school, if you can do that, you've had a great victory. You can meet them. If you can have a conversation and get them back into school, that is a great victory. It is much, much easier for you parents to not go to the school at all. But if you have to, and if you do, and you get them back into school, you've dug yourself out of a hole, and kudos to you.
Well, the other thing that you talk about, it's hinging on the fact of how much of these anxiety management tools you've been working on at home. And if the content of this is kind of just focused on this school stuff, you may not have had all these other conversations where you've externalized worry and talked about it in forms of patterns. So I'm just thinking here's a family where all of a sudden they've got frequent flyers who are always calling. Are they doing the work around this content and these patterns at home where it shows up in other ways too?
Right. And that's the front loading, is that I always want to look at the big picture and what are the skills we're trying to teach these anxious kids. And if you are playing whack-a-mole, if you are treating every visit to the nurse or every phone call from the nurse or every phone call from the school counselor to pick up your kid as if it's some sort of separate, isolated incident, then you're not seeing the big picture. It is pretty unusual, I would say, for a child to be frequently going to the school nurse or calling to get picked up from school because their anxiety is so overwhelming. It's very unusual that you wouldn't be discussing that at home too, because they often don't want to go to school in the first place, or they're having difficulty handling other situations where they have to step into something. So to have it be totally fine at home and then they want to leave school, that's unusual, but it can happen for sure. And particularly with the younger kids when it first starts showing up. And also, I'll say this too, just as a little aside, but important. Oftentimes when this first starts to happen with little kids and you're getting calls to pick them up from school, one of the things that parents will do is go to the pediatrician, which is fine to do. So what happens when you go to the pediatrician is that if they think that they're treating physical symptoms, they will go down the path of what's wrong with their tummy and fine to rule things out. But as soon as you begin to understand, as soon as you begin to realize that the symptoms that they're having at school go away when you bring them home, lots of times with kids have tummy aches at school, I will often ask, do they have tummy aches on Saturday? Do they have tummy aches on Sunday? Do they have tummy aches during the summer? Do they have tummy aches on a snow day? There's a snow day. Yeehaw, no school. Do they get a tummy ache at 11 o'clock? Interesting. Probably not. So when you're bringing your child home because they're sick and you go to the pediatrician, just be aware that you might be falling into the pattern of playing whack-a-mole rather than recognizing that this is a somatic pattern of worry, for sure.
When we come back, let's talk about how this plays out when your child has the ability to text you.
Yeah. Ooh. Go to your bathroom vanity and count how many skincare products you have sitting there. And I have 15. I don't even remember what half of them do, but here's the thing. You can get those same results with JLo Beauty's Deluxe Kit, the one and done skincare solution that is clinically proven to boost your skin's radiance and luminosity for an immediate and lasting glow. The secret is JLo Beauty's 5-step routine featuring 5 multitasking formulas designed to cleanse, refresh, and prep your skin to take on the day. That JLo Deluxe Kit is an easy-to-follow morning and evening solution that gives your skin a smoother, visibly brighter look, improves the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles, and protects against UVAs and UVBs. Get more glow for less with your skincare routine. Try JLo Beauty Deluxe Kit for 60 days. And if you're not completely satisfied, just return the bottles, even if they're empty, and you will get your money back. Get the only skincare routine you'll ever need. Head to jlobeauty.com/Flusterclux to receive 20% off plus 3 free limited time offer gifts. Head to jlobeauty.com/Flusterclux for 20% off and 3 free time limited offer gifts, a $175 value. jlobeauty.com/Flusterclux. I love my cat. I've always had cats. Sometimes I have 4 cats. It's freezing outside. And there's a lot of predators out there. So guess what? My cat is an indoor cat. During the cold months of winter, every cat's an indoor cat. If there's one thing that can really stink up being stuck inside, it's the litter box. I know this for a fact. Don't let that nasty smell ruin your winter wonderland. Switch to Pretty Litter like I did. Pretty Litter's non-clumping formula traps odor and moisture. It's ultra absorbent, it's lightweight, low dust, and one 6-pound bag works for up to a month. Fantastic. Pretty Litter gives me peace of mind. It changes color to indicate early signs of potential illnesses in my little kitty, like urinary tract infections, kidney issues, and more, things we really want to pay attention to with our kitties. Since Pretty Litter ships right to my door, free shipping right to my door, I never run out. I don't have huge kitty litter bags taking up space. I don't have to go out in the cold and lug those huge tubs from a store to my car and into my house. Pretty Litter's Health Monitor gives you peace of mind. So, indoor cats and indoor humans agree, Pretty Litter helps my house smell fresh and clean. Go to prettylitter.com/Flusterclux to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. That's prettylitter.com/Flusterclux to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. prettylitter.com/Flusterclux. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details.
It's not always easy to find a great mentor who can help you level up. My dream mentor, Martha Stewart. So I was really excited when I heard that she has a class on Masterclass. With Masterclass, you can learn from the best to become your best. Masterclass is the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 of the world's best. For just $10 a month, an annual membership with Masterclass gets you unlimited access to every instructor. And you can access Masterclass on your phone, computer, smart TV, or even in audio mode while you're driving. Learn to make new habits with New York Times bestselling author James Clear, or improve your physical and mental well-being with leading gut health experts, or build stronger relationships with renowned psychotherapist Esther Perel. And the classes really make a difference. 88% of the members feel that Masterclass has made a positive impact on their lives. I've been a member of Masterclass now for over 3 years, and I just get so inspired when I scan all of the mentors available to show me how to level up on all of my personal hobbies, from gardening to cooking, interior design, to really making a difference in the most important skills in my life, whether it's business, relationships, or well-being. Every new membership comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so don't wait another moment to start your learning journey with Masterclass. Right now, Flusterclux listeners get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/fluster. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/fluster. Masterclass.com/fluster.
Okay, so now back to the show.
Hey, Lynn, we talk about whack-a-mole a lot, and I just hope everyone knows that because as you say it, it's like if you went to like Chuck E. Cheese or any of those kind of pizza places, right? There's always like a whack-a-mole machine where you're given that big rubber foam mallet to whack those little characters that keep popping up.
Right. And I don't know, what's the goal of whack-a-mole? To just hit as many as you can?
You try and hit them as you can in a timed
game. Yeah. But they keep popping up. Yeah, so let's talk about what happens when you can text. So more and more, actually, which will be not surprising to anybody, I've been traveling to schools, and more schools are putting in bell-to-bell, no cell phone policies, which is awesome. I was just in a school where they're doing that, and they're already just seeing such a difference in the way that the kids interact and relate to each other. And it was also great because I was talking to the high schoolers, and nobody had their phones out, which was really awesome. Because sometimes I'm trying to talk to high schoolers and I'm competing with Instagram. It's not going to be a fair fight. But what if you are in a situation where your child does have their phone? Very often in high school, when kids are dealing with anxiety, when they're dealing with something, they will text their parents to come and pick them up. And it is hard for parents to know in that moment what they should do. Even if you have a plan in place, and even if the school's policy is that nobody leaves campus unless they are assessed by the nurse, or you can't go home from school unless you're given permission, it is more and more common for kids to absolutely circumvent that. And parents are happy to circumvent it. So the child will text them and say, I'm sick, can you come pick me up? Or I'm freaking out, come pick me up. Or I'm upset about this, or somebody did this, can you come pick me up? And the parents are like, okay. So they'll go to the school and get the kid, and they will text the school and say, I'm here to pick up my child, please send them out. And the school's like, we didn't even know this was going on. And particularly, we're dealing with anxiety here, we're dealing with depression. Parents really need to be communicating with the school. And the place where this really goes down the wrong path is when it becomes acrimonious, when it becomes a battle between the school and the parent, because the parent thinks that the school isn't understanding their child's suffering. And the school thinks that the parents is enabling this behavior. Very often, both of those things are happening at once, and both of those things can be somewhat true. Sometimes the school hasn't been good at communicating to the parents that they really do understand, or that there really is a plan in place. And the parents are very quick to blame the school or feel unsupported by the school. And the school is getting more and more frustrated with a parent that is not abiding by the plan. So they're working really hard to keep the child in school, and the parent is circumventing that. So you really have to work with the school and the student, because if we've got a high school student, they should be a part of this conversation. The goal when you have a child, we don't want this to lead to prolonged school avoidance, because that becomes a big problem. The goal is to have the child in school as early as possible and for as long as possible, meaning once you get them in the school, keep them in the school. I am not a big fan of negotiating with the anxiety disorder, but there are some kids that are having such a difficult time being in school that it is okay to make a plan with them that there is somewhere they can go to hang out. If there's a class that's really difficult for them and they are going somewhere else during their fourth period class and they're still getting the work and they're still staying on top of the academics, the teacher is working with them, I will make that deal as long as we know that we're working towards something. But if you have a middle school or high school student who is routinely texting you and you are routinely going and taking them out of school, you've got a tiger by the tail. Remember that avoidance and anxiety and lack of social connection are all big risk factors for developing depression, and we don't want to go down that path. Being able to say to your child ahead of time, if you text me to come and pick you up from school, I am not going to do that immediately. And in fact, our goal is for you to stay in school so you can practice managing this. I love you. It's hard for me to get those texts. I understand. I was anxious myself when I was in high school, but we really don't want to put this pattern in charge, because that's me putting your anxiety in charge. That's me putting your depression in charge. And that's me saying, I am not going to follow through with you developing the skills that you need to develop. Kids don't like to hear that. They absolutely don't like to hear that. But I will tell you that when I am called in to consult with a family, because there are some schools that I do consultations with families, probably 90% of the time, the reason they have finally called me in to consult is because the parent is picking up the child at school. And then the parent can't get the child to school. So you really want to pay attention to that behavior, to that pattern as early as possible. It is good for a high school student to have a place to go, to have a adult that understands, that gets it. But the texting the parent during school becomes a really big problem really quickly. You got to trust me on this. I see it over and over and over again.
What's easy now is hard later.
Yeah. And oftentimes, again, like if I say it's a sophomore or a junior, if I get a history, if I look at how school nurse visits were going or how often that child was missing school, usually the pattern has sort of been gaining momentum throughout their school life. Not all the time, but very frequently. The other thing about texting from school is that very often that's what a child is doing in order to get reassurance. So remember earlier I was talking about they're going to the school nurse and the school nurse takes their temperature and says, "You're not sick." And then that's enough for the child to hang in there. The same thing happens. A child will be texting, a teenager will be texting a parent from school saying, "What if I get sick? I think I'm going to be sick." Or "What if I do this thing?" Or what if? And they're waiting for the parent to offer the reassurance. This can be an OCD thing, but it's not necessarily an OCD thing, that a child is texting you and looking for your response as reassurance, your response as co-compulsing. I'm just going through this with a family right now, and the mom is really good at following directions. The middle schooler was texting her all day long and texting her things of sort of, "What if I'm doing this thing?" or "This might happen," or "I'm worried about this." And the mom was responding and responding and responding. And in a session with both of them, I said, "Mom, knock it off. You can't do that anymore." And I explained to her why. And the mom stopped responding to the text. And they're down to now maybe 1 or at the most 2 a day. And we were up to like 30 a day. So as soon as the mom got out of the pattern, as soon as the mom recognized what was going on, things really, really calmed down. And I was teaching the middle schooler at the same time, what is her brain doing and what is her worry doing? So everybody's on the same page. And change happens when we consistently make sure that we're not doing the disorder. Yeah. And so hard. I mean, really, it is so hard. When this sort of was ramping up for this mom, she was so distraught because, of course, her child is suffering. Her child is sending her these texts. It is really, really, really hard. If you watched Anxious Nation, the documentary, this is what was going on with Noah when he was little. And he couldn't text because he didn't have a phone. As he got older, he could text. But the parents were doing everything they could, stepping in, even going to school with him, sitting with him in school. I've had parents who have been advised by licensed mental health professionals to sit in the parking lot all day long so their child can look out the classroom window and see that they're there. Wrong approach, everybody. Wrong approach. Yeah.
And the approach also isn't when they text you to write back, "Who dis?" It's somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah, somewhere in the middle. Well, the other thing, too, that's interesting is that kids who are looking for reassurance for their parents, so they're texting all the time, they will get sneaky and they will text things that they're trying to disguise that. So they'll say things like, "Hey, I can't find my blue pencil. Did I leave it at home?" And then the parent will text back, "No, I don't see your blue pencil." And all they're doing is making sure that the parent is paying attention. They want to know the parent has the phone on, the parent is there. Anxiety is sneaky.
Oh, this goes both ways. Because as a parent, when I'm waiting to get that text to confirm that my child arrived somewhere, I send the disguised text.
I know. I totally get it. I totally get it. Yeah. You know what? I was watching All Creatures Great and Small, which has come back. If you haven't watched the new iteration of All Creatures Great and Small, it's so good, but it's World War II. And so James Harriet and Tristan, the characters, are going off to war. And I think, oh my gosh, the families didn't know where their family members were. And James came back and he didn't tell anybody. They didn't know he was coming back. He just showed up. It is just, oh my God.
Well, if anyone needs to understand how we got into this mess, prior generations had the strength and skills mastered of tolerating uncertainty that we no longer practice.
Because they had to.
Exactly. Technology has intervened and prevented us from developing skills that we had for generations and generations.
Right. That's why I call smartphones certainty devices. I jokingly say when I'm presenting, I'm saying, remember when you couldn't remember who sang that song? You're like, oh my God, who sang that song? And you had to live with that uncertainty all day, not knowing who sang that song. Now you can just take up your phone and say, Siri,
who sang Maniac from Flashdance?
Yeah, right. Who sang Maniac from Flashdance?
But I bet we both know the answer. Michael Cimbella.
Oh, I did not know that answer.
I'm your Google today.
Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
Hey, friends. If you're facing divorce, thinking about it, or navigating the chaos it can bring, I've got something just for you. I'm Kate Anthony, and I host the New York Times recommended The Divorce Survival Guide podcast, your one-stop resource for surviving and thriving through divorce. Each week, we dive into everything from emotional healing and co-parenting to legal strategies and starting over. You'll hear from top experts, powerful guest stories, and maybe a little tough love along the way. Because divorce, it's hard, but you don't have to do it alone. This isn't just about getting through it. It's about rebuilding and reclaiming your life on the other side. Whether you're in the middle of a messy split or planning your next chapter, I've got your back. So hit that follow button and join me on the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, because survival isn't the end, it's just the beginning.